All right, back here on Inside Wrestling Radio, up to the interview section of the program, and today we welcome in a guy I met a few years ago, Boomer Payne. Boomer started in 1995. He's wrestled for NWA East, WXW out of Pennsylvania, and IWC out of Pennsylvania. He wrestled for the USCW. Is that right, Boomer? USCW?
United States Championship Wrestling.
All right, he wrestled for them as Cal K Convict, and we'll talk about Cal K a little bit later in the interview. But right now, welcome to the program, Boomer Payne. Boomer, how you doing, brother?
Dude, always good to see you, bro.
Man, it's great to have you in. I really appreciate it. And Boomer is known, for you people who don't know Boomer, is known as one of the big rib guys in the business. And that means he likes to play a lot of practical jokes and mess with the guys kind of backstage, some of the things that we do for fun. And Boomer, that's kind of a lost art now. Don't you think the art of the rib is kind of going away?
Man, it's this day and age, no one wants to rib anymore. Guys can't take the ribs anymore. So
they really can't. They get mad and they want to get all fighty about it, you know. But every time I've ever been in the dressing room with Boomer, I will say this: I've seen him. He's always up to something, and if he's sneaking around and Boomer's not in your line of sight for a few minutes, he's probably somewhere and he's up to no good. But Boomer, before we get into all that stuff and what you got going on right now, tell us about your very early beginnings in the business and what got you in. Were you always a fan, or was it something you kind of fell into, or how did you come about getting into the business?
Man, I grew up watching wrestling, and you know, it wasn't Saturday mornings didn't mean cartoons for me. It was wrestling.
Sure.
And So, I've always dreamed of being a professional. You know, you write those papers when you're in third grade, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Mine was always about wrestling. And I fell into it. I owned a memorabilia store back in Pennsylvania, and a guy walked in and tried to sell me some wrestling memorabilia. We got to talking. He gave me a number of a school, and I said, hey, this is my shot. So I took it.
Really?
Yeah.
So now, who you were telling me earlier before the interview about a guy, Sal Calante. What was the deal with him?
That was the guy that came in. You know, he tried to con me to buy some wrestling merchandise, and he conned me into school. And yeah, he took $2,500 worth of my money and didn't teach me a damn thing.
And how old were you at the time, Boom?
I was 18.
Okay, 18 years old. You just wanted to break in. You didn't know any better, and probably didn't have any other contacts in the business. And this guy pretty much just come in and worked you.
Yeah, and pretty much, you know, the way he sold it was this was one of the big, 4 or 5. You know, that's what I was training for. I didn't know anything about the independents. I was naive about that.
Sure. And did he do the training or so-called training?
Well, if you call it that. Yeah, he did. When he did show up, you know. But it was left to a lot of us to pretty much do our own thing.
Figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that was it.
And you were telling us a story about the backdrop. Tell us that.
Yeah. Even not knowing the insides of the business.
Yeah.
When he was teaching backdrops, when you go to backdrop a guy, you grab him by the ankles, and even as a mark, that ain't right.
That's great. Yeah, we were talking to Cruiser Lewis last week in here, and he was talking about the training. And some of those guys, it's wonder a lot of guys haven't gotten killed by some of this so-called training that goes on out there from these guys who don't know anything about the business.
Well, they got into the business, and then they think they know it, so they're trying to make the buck, because they didn't make anything in the business.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the Cal K Convict. What was the deal behind that?
That was the first gimmick, man. It was the easiest thing to do was the convict gimmick, and me trying to push the envelope a little bit. Cal with a K,
sure.
K, convict,
right.
So people didn't get it.
Really? Went over their heads?
Right over their heads.
All right. So now that was your first gimmick. You said, tell us about your very first show. You said you were 18 at the time.
I had just turned 19 on our first show. It was in Fairmont, West Virginia, at the Woody Williams Armory.
What kind of house was that first show?
It was probably about 500 people there.
Wow.
Had a big entrance with lights, and I said, man, damn, I made it. So wrestled a team, Pure Country. That night, who else was on there? Virgil was there, Nikolai Volkov.
Oh, wow.
Mad Dog David Lynch from North Carolina. Scotty McKeever's done a lot of work around here, so I made it big time. You know, and after that first match, thought it was over. I said, I could die and go to heaven. I've achieved my dream.
Sure.
So, but then after that, I stayed with USCW for about a year, and it was just bull. I mean, just the politics and this and that. So I jumped to a rival promotion. It was the PWX, which later became NWA East.
Okay.
And that started there, and that's where I really came into my own, finished up the training that I didn't receive in USCW. And,
now, who'd you work with in the NWA East?
The promoter's name's Jim Miller, who's still doing it today.
Wow.
He was on the NWA board, was president there for a while. But yeah, I mean, we've had guys, I mean, super names that came in, Shane Douglas, Stevie Richards, Blue Meanie when they were in ECW doing
Sure.
the BWO.
Yeah.
Worked Dan Severn and Greg Valentine, and a lot of those guys come in. And I hooked up with head shrinker Samu, and that's where I really finished my training, was with him.
You had said something in the pre-interview about Samu, and you worked with. I imagine you worked with him a good bit up there.
Oh, he took me on the road and took me under his wing, and he didn't have to, but he did, and that's where it really just clicked then. You know, when you get someone with that knowledge, and I mean the wrestling history in his family with Offa and Sika.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
And you know, he really took me under his wing and showed me what I needed to be doing.
And how long did you work with those guys over there at the NWA East?
Oh God, I was there probably 6 years before I left, and you know, I did a lot of work with Offa and WXW, and
Sure.
you know, got a chance to work Snitsky before he got his call up. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah, Snitsky, and he was horrible.
Yeah. As you could tell on TV.
Yeah, he was horrible back then. I'm surprised he got a job.
Yeah, that's probably just because of his size and his unusual look.
Yeah.
You know that he got the call up. So now, when did you start this with the ribs and stuff? Was that something that was kind of always part of your deal backstage?
I would say probably about 98, 99 is when I really started the ribs, and guys didn't know how to take it at first.
Right.
You know, but I mean, the ribs that I've pulled off over the years, you know, super gluing guys' shoes to the floor, duct taping their bags, putting icy hot in their trunks.
That's one of the classics there.
Yeah. You know, unlacing people's boots, and, you know, just stuff like that. And
Has it ever gotten you in any trouble?
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. You know, people want to fight after, you know, they want to buck up to you, but
Yeah.
it's part of the business. You know? And
Absolutely it is, and that goes back to when we were starting out earlier in the days, and Mickey, he was world famous for ribs back in the day. He was kind of like you. If he wasn't messing with somebody, he wasn't happy.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
And he did some things that I can't really even talk about here on the radio. but some of those ribs from were brutal, you know. And some of those older guys, man, were just. And if the thing is, if they let you see that, if you let them see that it bothered you, forget about it.
You're on the list.
You're a marked man.
Exactly.
You know
and my ribs are a mere comparison to the ones
yeah.
back in the day. I mean, you know, I remember Sammy telling me a story about his dad and Sika coming in, and every day that Andre would come in and move their bag.
Yeah.
And Sika get mad, so one day he put a shotgun in his bag, and
Wow.
yeah, and Andre came in, moved his bag. Sika pulled out the shotgun, said, "I will shoot you," you know, and
Over moving the man's back.
over moving the man's bag. And
Incredible.
and even Sammy was big too. He told me by the time he's in Puerto Rico, and he got out of his car and he went over to the babyface car, and he said to the marks, he's like, "Hey, you don't want to touch my car." And they came out after the show, and the car was turned over.
Wow.
And it was babyface. So.
Yeah, some big time stuff going
Yeah.
on out there in the day. So Boomer, what brought you to South Carolina? You were big in Pennsylvania there for a lot of years. What brought you here?
Just a new opportunity, job opportunities and stuff. And believe me, it wasn't my choice to move here. And in fact, when I left Pittsburgh, I said I was done with wrestling. You know, I'd done everything I wanted to do.
Right,
And
yeah.
And I knew. I mean, I had got to a level where I didn't want to start all over, and I knew I had to. And but once I came down here and seen the wrestling, I said, it's not going to take me long to get my spot back. So
Exactly.
You know.
And we'll pick up right there. We're up on a break, Boomer. We'll pick up right there when you get back, and we'll talk about some of the promoters you've worked for since you've been in South Carolina, and we'll talk about the infamous incidents over at Jerry J. Eagle's spot, and you can bring us up to date on what's going on over there and what you're doing right now in your career. We'll be right back. More Inside Wrestling Radio coming up next with Boomer Payne.